It has allowed us to use Caribbean American Heritage Month to go beyond what I call, the carnival parties and the jerk chicken events, etc., to really much more serious about developing the policy literacy. I've been really pushing that a lot. How can I get communities? Oh, I don't want to get involved in politics. And I think because of our history back home, many of us have had parents that have bad taste in their mouths because with a small island, if you run afoul of the party, you don't get work, etc., etc. So they've been afraid of politics. I'm like, this. I said, America's quite different. In America, we're continually dreaming the American dream into being. So it's no point in you sitting off the side and complain about what's not working. You got to, as Shirley Chisholm said, roll up your sleeve, quit the whimpering and complaining, and get to work. And that's what I've been pushing them to do. I think we're doing much better. And I'm certainly hoping that this year, June in New York, we're going to have a much bigger presence of Caribbean American Heritage Month than we've ever had, because I'll be able to get people to work more closely together.
If you're just joining us, you are tuned into the Foxworth Theory. And I'm your host, Eugenia Foxworth, and today's guest is Dr. Claire Nelson. She had to go for a water break. Now, Dr. Nelson, would you tell me about your background and where you grew up, please?
Wow, that's an exciting story. I grew up, as I like to say, in 1960s Jamaica. When I was born, Jamaica was not even independent yet. So we got our independence in 1962. And so when I grew up in my teenage years, we grew up under a prime minister who was a left-wing global socialist mover and shaker. And so I drank the Kool-Aid because he used to talk a lot about Jamaica is going to create a new economic world order, and we are going to become truly independent nation. So I drank the Kool-Aid, right? I also went to all girls high school, and we were told, you ladies are going to be the leaders of Jamaica's future. So I kind of grew up assuming that I'll be a leader of some sort or not. Now, mind you, at the time I stuttered very badly, but somehow I was still a leader in being sent to the principal's office for saying things I shouldn't say. I don't know how come I managed to say so many things that was not allowed, but clearly there was a part of me that always was, let me stand up for justice. So I came to America at 18, fully formed. My politics haven't changed much. My personality hasn't changed much. And it's not to say I haven't evolved. I think I've evolved in terms of my patience and compassion for others. But the politics was pretty well set in terms of how I view the world, how I view our ability to take power and own our own power, despite whatever oppressions and labels might be put on us. And that's how I've lived my life. In my career as an international development specialist, as the only Black woman engineer for many years in my organization, when I was put upon, kicked upon, spat upon, thrown upon, I used that anger to sort of at least I should say I use that because actually God gave me the instruction, right? That I should become the voice of the voiceless. And so the work I did to do transform the way the institutions worked with people of African descent in Latin America is something I'm extremely proud of. That I was able to usher in a new way of working with Black communities from Argentina to Mexico, working in a space I did in the international development community. And so that's a snapshot of everything, but it gives you a sense of, how I became the person I am right now.
And it's beautiful. How did you find your way to become a sustainability engineer?
I studied industrial engineering at from Buffalo. So when I left Jamaica, I went to Buffalo, New York. Yes, folks, and it was a real mistake. You see, stupid me, I didn't know. Remember that maps have scale. So I looked at them up and I thought, Buffalo, New York, can go down to the city on the weekend and party. Till I landed up in New York City on that August day, and my godmother, who was taking us, driving us up to Buffalo, said, "Well, we have to leave here like 3 o'clock in the morning so we can get there. It's an 8 hour drive." And I'm like, "What have I done?" It was too late. So I went to Buffalo and became a co-founder of the first Caribbean Swim Association on campus. By the time I left, our Caribbean one day event had become a 4 day festival. So I'm kind of used to. I was the what? I was the costume designer, tie dye, cook. I he was dance choreographer, folk song teacher, you name it. I had a ball on campus. From there, I went to Purdue, where I also did industrial engineering. I also launched the first Caribbean event at Purdue University in the middle of the bush in Indiana. We were only 8 students on campus, okay? Say no more than that. But anyway, somehow I convinced them to do this. And then eventually I moved to Washington, D.C., where I've lived for the last 40 years.
You are, and I don't use this word loosely, an amazing woman. Oh, an amazing woman. And I love your spirit. Now, what is the state of the Caribbean community in the United States?
Well, right now I would say we're doing pretty good in general. I would say if I bring in the Haitian Americans as well, even though they're having their issues with in Haiti, as a community, I would say we do quite well on the whole. Of course, there's always pocket of poverty and people being involved in the criminal justice system, etc. But when you look at the fact that we have quite a few elected officials there in New York, for example, of Caribbean heritage, the borough president of Queens, Bronx, Brooklyn are all of Caribbean heritage. Of course, New York considers itself the capital of Caribbean America. They think they have probably equal amount of Caribbean people living in New York as in the region. That's possibly true, okay? I'm not going to defend that. In South Florida as well, another huge pocket, a lot of people involved in politics, and therefore you see the kind of success, I would say, both on the individual level. My concern is more on the collective level. We're tended to be very individualistic. However, I think COVID has begun to shift some people into being much more collective and intentional about creating community where they are so that we can respond better. So rather than complain, "Oh, the politician's not doing this and not doing that," I'm saying, well, you're not organized in a way that you can be noticed. If you want to go ahead and be important by yourself, fine, right? But that's not going to help you when something bad happens. And COVID has allowed us to use Caribbean American Heritage Month to go beyond what I call, the carnival parties and the jerk chicken events, etc., to really much more serious about developing the policy literacy. I've been really pushing that a lot. How can I get communities? Oh, I don't want to get involved in politics. And I think because of our history back home, many of us have had parents that have bad taste in their mouths because with a small island, if you run afoul of the party, you don't get work, etc., etc. So they've been afraid of politics. I'm like, this. I said, America's quite different. In America, we're continually dreaming the American dream into being. So it's no point in you sitting off the side and complain about what's not working. You got to, as Shirley Chisholm said, roll up your sleeve, quit the whimpering and complaining, and get to work. And that's what I've been pushing them to do. I think we're doing much better. And I'm certainly hoping that this year, June in New York, we're going to have a much bigger presence of Caribbean American Heritage Month than we've ever had, because I'll be able to get people to work more closely together.
Oh, great, because I know a lot of people are waiting for that, waiting for the
Yes.
food, waiting for the excitement, waiting for everything, the happiness. So there's so much sadness now.
Yes.
Now, speaking of that, What are some issues that the Caribbean islands still face? Jamaica wants to be released from the British oversight. Haiti is plagued by natural disasters. Is Africa a heavy investor in the Caribbean?
All right, that's a very rich question. Thank you for asking that. So, as a lover of people of African descent, I consider much of my work that I do now as a sustainability engineer and a futurist, and the reason why I chartered the Caribbean Space Society to really begin to have a conversation of where do you want to go, right? So Caribbean, of course, is plagued with a climate challenge. We're plagued with the fact that we're small economies and we continue to be governed financially by the rules and strictures of the International Monetary Fund. And so when you're not a part of the rule making and you have to take the rules as given to you economically, you're always going to be disadvantaged because the rules are not set up for you to go beyond a certain level. And I say that with all due respect, having been told on my job that one of the reasons why I was not promotable at the time was that I was perceived as working in the Caribbean interest. I said, but sir, this is the Caribbean division. Yes, but you come down to the Caribbean and you meet with all kinds of people and you stir them up to ask for things. Okay. So then I said to myself, oh, you mean this thing is not really what I thought it was? I thought as a development planner, I was supposed to go down and tell people, hey, here is how you could move forward, and here's what you need to ask the system for. So I recognizing that the rule book, who is at the table of rule book making, is very critical. What this means that as Africa and the Caribbean close their gaps, and we saw in 2019, 2020 visits from the president of Ghana, the president of Kenya, I think the third one I can't remember, those two for sure, they did a tour of the Caribbean countries. That is building on what was began back in the early 2000s when the AU, as you know, would have called this region the sixth constituency of Africa. And there was an attempt to now make room for people of African descent, let's call ourselves the Lost Tribe, people from a Lost Tribe to now return and contribute to Africa's development. What we have seen is that the Barbadian Prime Minister, who is one of the most forward-thinking people, Prime Minister Mia Mottley, has decided that CARICOM should have an office in Africa. So we now have an office in Kenya. The Caribbean governments have an embassy in Kenya. They have removed all travel restrictions, so we don't need visas to go back and forth. So that's a major shift. And we see also that some of the Caribbean countries, Jamaica and Barbados, I believe, have embassy relationships with Ghana and Nigeria, I believe. So those are the two. And so we're beginning to work through what might a true partnership look like, and building on the lessons from the 1970s and even before that, when Nkrumah and Manley and the fathers of these former colonies were plotting things in London School of Economics, right? We are fast forward now. We do have our challenges where I'm an island, I'm a minister unto myself. Well, okay, you're only like 1 million people, right? New York is what, 8 million people? We're just fluff, okay? But I think people are beginning to outgrow that. And so we're seeing that there's hopefully, from my perspective, opportunity for us now at the people level. The governments have made it possible. It's up for us now as people. Universities, how can we create university partnerships? How can we create academic exchanges? And so Ghana's experiment in 2019, the year of the return, was a great start because people of African descent from all over the world went traipsing over to Ghana and began to fall in love with their roots in a new way. I'm hoping as people move back and forth, some of us will take the stars off our eyes and not go in like naive thinking that it's going to be heaven back in Africa. It's not. But we can now have a sense of self and a sense of pride to recognize that we need to really, as Marcus Garvey said, contribute to Africa's well-being so that the race can rise. Because what we're seeing, the new attempt to colonize Africa through investment is happening. It's real. The new attempt to colonize the Caribbean through investment is happening. It's real. And so we find people on the ground Caribbean angry because they feel their beaches are being sold off, their oil, their bauxite, their whatever, but sold off in a way that they don't get to participate. And these are some of the challenges for development conversation. And so, as a futurist, my real hope is that I can educate more people who are community organizers on the ground to have futures literacy as a tool in their toolbox of how you organize yourself to advance the well-being of more people.
Thank you so much. And I have one other question to ask you. You've touched on a few things, but this is an important question. How does education of diverse communities factor into the sustainability of the United States?
Wow, this is critical. By 2040, well, by 2030, America, according to the census projections, is going to become a majority minority country. So some of what you're seeing in terms of the new redistricting rules and gerrymandering, as they call it, is to protect certain interests. Because if you are now a minority in number, you're going to still have to figure out how you will have a certain number of seats in the state houses, the local elections, etc., build up to national. The Hispanic community will be the largest number. Blacks will be the second. Asians the third, and of course, Native Americans will remain the smallest number in this country. It means that for America to continue to succeed, they're going to have to invest, even if they have AI doing the work on robots or whatever, you're going to have to invest in education for diverse communities that is equitable and creates the kind of citizenry that you need to maintain the social cohesion of the country. Otherwise, you're going to have the social decay that makes life unbearable. You cannot be a superpower if most of your people are miserable, unhappy, and therefore are continually breaking things, breaking the system, challenging the system. We also don't want to see an expanse of the prison industrial complex, right? So we do want to see our, I don't like the word a defunding the police because I hate that term. It sounds stupid to me. But we want to see a refunding of the social goods such that as much money is spent on investing in young people before they get into the prison pipeline as they spent on keeping them in the prison pipeline. Because I was in a meeting once in the state of Maryland, and I found out that to keep the cost of a person in prison in the state of Maryland at the time, this is about maybe 8 years ago or 10 years ago, was $150,000. Do you know how much they were spending on education in the weakest parts of Baltimore? 30 something $1,000. I was so mad. I said, not my taxpayer dollar. This has to shift. So you see with the imbalance. If you're only spending $30,000 and the schools in the Black communities and the brown communities are in such disarray, bad labs, bad teachers, teachers who are depressed themselves, so they take out this stuff on the kids who reinforce, oh, you kids are stupid, you can't do anything, and they go home and they hear it from their parents who are frustrated. No wonder we have a society of Black and brown people who are continually trapped in systemic multi-generational poverty. So we need to have a true investment in reimagining what the future of America looks like. And if we want an American future that is bright, that is inclusive, that is prosperous for more people, a future of well-being, we're going to have to change those investment dollars so there's a greater investment of good education that's suited for purpose, fit for the purpose of creating an inclusive, prosperous, sustainable America.
Thank you so much, Dr. Claire Nelson.
Thank you.
This has been quite an education for us. It
Thank,
also has brought smiles to my face. And
thank
I
you.
want to thank you. And I
Thank you.
want to thank everyone for joining us today on the
Thank you.
Foxworth Theory, which airs every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for joining the Foxworth Theory and travel safely.
Thank you.